Hello everyone, DK here of Apocalypse Riders, and welcome to my third video tutorial on the 001 game creator engine. The time where I'm at is 11:30 p.m. on the 29th of April 2021, and this video isn't going to be as much of a tutorial as it is going to be a lecture of some sort. You can still follow along, but we're only going to be making a very small change to the resource we were working on in the first two videos. Other than that, we're gonna be learning a lot about the black void and the 3D space in it. Before we get into that though, in the very first video we did, the very first tutorial, we submitted a bug report after a crash. That bug report was on the 20th of March. 9 days later, we got an email saying that this has been fixed and will be available for the next release. And if we go to the Steam page for 001 Game Creator, scroll down to the update history, we can see that 1 week ago, as of today, on April 22nd, there was a hotfix for the Tileset Editor on tiles and terraformations in the patch notes. It says it fixes the memory leaks and loss of graphics when copying, pasting, and editing tiles. So hopefully that issue is fixed. If it was, it'll make our lives a lot easier if we have to add any more edited tile graphics in the future. But just in case, I'm still gonna be saving a lot, at least until I'm sure the problem was somewhat fixed. Alright, let's get into it. I'm gonna open up the engine and let's make a new blank template. Let's just call it Tileset Practice 3. And the first thing we're gonna do is import the resource we created in the second video tutorial. Alright, now that we have that in the engine, let's go create a new map. Let's just call it 1, forget everything else. And here we have the black void. Let's go ahead and fill it up real quick with the solid colored grass. And let's put a few dark grass with blades tiles in it. So one option we didn't talk about last time, I'm just gonna right click this dark grass and click on edit. Should take us to the Tileset Editor. So far we've been working with the ground layer. We do have 3 more layers here, and we have a few options here that we haven't talked about. In the bottom, we have variability that we also didn't talk about. If you check the 3 options in the bottom, hover your mouse on them, the game creator engine will tell you what they're supposed to do. So on this dark grass with blades, if we select this option, flip vertically, and OK, going back to the map, you can see that some of these tiles are flipped vertically. Let's also do it horizontally. You can see now that there's a lot of variety in here. Now you can choose to keep it like this, or you can choose to have it the way it was before. The engine randomly flips. I think you can also rotate. I don't know how much of a difference this will make. Yeah, almost none. I'm gonna keep this option off, but I am gonna turn the flipping on for the base colored grass blades. Let's see how that looks like by filling real quick with the fill tool. There we go. Let's see if we can discuss one of the other options. This one we'll have to wait on. This one will also have to wait on. The engine does have the ability to light certain areas of the map, and if we enable this option, it will prevent the tile from being affected by that light. This can only be shown by practice, so we're gonna skip that for now. The offset stuff in the variability section, that will mostly apply to objects, not the tiles that we place on the floor. And this option over here, display as square in map editor, if you look up here and tick this, you can see how it kind of became a smaller area, which is useful for when you're dealing with the expanded style tiles. Let's turn this back off and quickly export this with the change we made for the bladed grass tiles, that they're gonna be flipped vertically and horizontally at random. We can also do it for these two, but I'm not sure how it would affect the terraformation on the edges. Let's give it a try real quick. I'm gonna go ahead and draw some dirt. Alright, patch of normal dirt. So a couple of these got flipped. We can sometimes notice it's also getting flipped horizontally. Let's see what happens on the edges. The edges seem fine. So it looks like the variability stuff only applies to the stuff you place as its own thing. It doesn't look bad for these, but I don't know if I like this type of grass being flipped, because the shadows kind of point to the top while some of the other shadows point to the bottom. I'm gonna disable the flipping for this tile over here, but I'll keep it on for the tile we named Dirt 3. So let's go back to the editor, turn flipping vertically off. For this one, we can leave it to flip horizontally if it wants to. Let's go ahead and save, and let's export the tileset again. I'm just gonna save over the one we had last time. And that's everything we're gonna be doing for the resource we had last time in this video. So, in order to talk about the other types of tiles, let's go ahead and close this game. We don't have to save the map. And go ahead and click on File, create a new game. This time, and for the first time, we're gonna be choosing an action RPG template. Let's just name it Collisions. Alright, so this is the demo RPG map that comes with the engine. You can test it out if you click on this play map button over here, or test game button. Yeah, just click on test game up on the top, and whenever you make your own game, if you want to test the whole game from the very start, aka from where you set the player in the first map to where he starts, this is what you need to click on to test the game. But ignoring that for now, let's click on create new map. Let's just name it 1. And let's remember that it does have a width, a height, and a depth. X, Y, Z tiles. And we remember from before that each tile is going to be 32 pixels by 32 pixels. So we have the black void again. These are the default tiles that come with the engine. Let's go ahead and fill the map with a certain kind. You can pick any. But now let's put some water tiles. Alright, so this is 4 tiles of water. And it is terraforming. Let's go to the Tileset Editor by right-clicking the water tile and clicking on Edit. You can see that the submersion option is set to 3. How far the player will submerge. So, if we just fill this whole section with water and click on this play button. Now remember, earlier I said if you click on the test button, it'll start the game as if you're the player and you're loading it up for the first time. If you click on play, you can choose where to place your character and start from that location, skipping any scripts that come with the beginning of the game. Since this isn't a blank template, which is what we've been doing before, it already has controls set up. So once I place the character, it's gonna have a sprite, and we're gonna be able to control that sprite and make it move around the map with the preset controls. So click anywhere on the ground and just click on OK with no emulation. So this is the default sprite that the engine has for this RPG. You can see I can control the character's movement with the arrow keys on my keyboard. So we're moving around, we're standing on the grass. If we move up towards the water, we're 1 tile in. You can see already that our feet kind of disappeared inside, so they got submerged. If I go to the tile after it, I got even more submerged. And this is the 3rd tile, 4th tile, and that's it. This is the maximum amount of submersion I'm getting. So you can see within 4 tiles, aka these 3, a sort of ramp was made that goes down into the water. And it stops after the 3rd tile, and that's where we can start swimming around. So if we go back to the tile sets and increase the submersion tiles to 6, instead of the ramp being 3 tiles long, it's going to be 6 tiles long. So what does that mean for when we start playing? Let's test it again. So let's start walking down. I'm getting submerged. I'm still getting submerged, but not as much as last time. And by this point in the last test, we were completely submerged to our head. This time it's taking a bit longer and longer, and now finally we're submerged. And you can see we're even a bit more submerged than we were last time. So that's how submersion works. It basically just creates a sort of ramp that goes inside into the ground, and that's where your character goes. One thing to note that even a single ground tile anywhere, so let's put 1 ground, oops, I'm gonna Control Z on the keyboard. So even a single grass tile over here, if we test the game like this and start walking towards it, I'm getting submerged, and then another ramp was created towards that one over there. So even though I'm very far away from this ground section over here, once I start getting close to this one, there's a radius around it that has the ramp as well. So in the case of having ground drawn this way, when the ramp is created, it'll take into account the tiles on the left too. So walking here, I'm not as submerged as I should be. But if I get further away from both of these, that's when I get submerged. That's all we need to know about submersion for now. Now for what we're gonna explain next, I'm gonna export any one of these lower objects. I'm just gonna use the bathroom section in the lower objects folder. So just click on the export button and export it somewhere on your computer. Let's also export an environment. This one that has the trees in it. Go ahead and export that. And let's export this decoration set too. Alright, after you're done with that, let's go ahead and close this game. By the way, I chose not to save my changes, but I think that even if you did save your changes for the demos that come with the game, I think you can still reset them to how they're supposed to be when you buy the engine. Just go to Steam and fix the installation, or I don't know what the option is for that. Let me check it real quick. Okay, so within Steam, if you right click the engine and click on properties, in your local files section you can verify integrity of software files, and it should reset any changes you do by mistake to the demos included with the engine. Let's go ahead and click on 3D Action RPG. We can call it Collisions 2. And I'm gonna just open up Paint real quick. So we have the black void when we start a new map. We know we can make tiles in the map, and we know that tiles are supposed to be this thing that the player character can walk on. So what are the tiles exactly? Well, everything in the game you can consider as a collision. So tiles are just a 2D picture in a 3D space. One second here. Alright. So when we started the map, we know we have a Z-axis, a Y-axis, and an X-axis. If we go over here and create a new map, call it 1, just to remind ourselves again. This is the grid. If you look at the top here, the numbers in brackets. If I put my mouse on the first tile, it's labeled 0, 0, 0. So this corner of the tile on the top left has the coordinates of 0. If we move over here, you can see that the X part of these numbers changed to 32, as in we moved 32 pixels to the right, and 1 because we reached the x-axis coordinate of 1. Same thing happens over here. If we move down one tile, the Y section, the second numbers, will change to 32. That means we moved 32 pixels to the bottom, and the position is 1 for the top left corner of this tile we're at right now. Going down again, it's going to be 64, and same thing to the right, multiples of 32. So how is it for the z-axis? Well, if you click page up on your keyboard, you're gonna go up by one level for whatever you're trying to draw. Right here we have the ground tile selected, so I can draw on this plane, and if I click on page up, I can draw above them. So right now, if you look over here, the third number is 1 because we went up one level in the z-axis, and the height we went up by is also 32 pixels. If I click on page up again on the keyboard, I move even further up. So I'm drawing above both this level and that level. And these ground tiles are just floating in the air. So what is a ground tile? If you right click one of them and edit, we said earlier that everything in the game can be thought of with collisions. So these tiles that we placed on the map, if they're ground tiles in the layer over here, that means they have a flat collision that the player is supposed to walk on. So their collision has a width and a length, but it does not have a height. So you can think of this as a piece of paper. If our character, let's say our character is just a ball and it's standing over this tile, the collision of the tile is gonna be in contact with the collision of the ball, and the tile will stop the ball from going through it and falling to the bottom of the void. Hopefully that clears things up for the tile section. Going into the lower objects, these are tiles that go on top of the ground layer tiles, but they can have variable collisions. So let's close this window real quick and go to the Import Resources tab, and let's import those 3 resources we exported a few minutes ago. So going into the Lower Objects tab in the top left, you can find the Bathroom resource. I'm just gonna go ahead and fill the map. Alright, that looks a little bit better. Okay, so let's just place one toilet here. Whoa, I said one. So now we have a toilet seat. If you right click the toilet and click on edit, it'll take you to the lower objects section, the bathroom set, and this is the toilet. Now objects can have a bunch of shapes, and these shapes just tell the engine how to implement the collision of the object. So standing tall means it has a collision. For this toilet it seems custom. That's interesting. Let's forget about that and choose cube. Alright, so we chose tall and we chose a cube collision. That means there is a cube 32 pixels wide, 32 pixels in length, and 32 pixels in height. It would look something like this, where this is 32 pixels, this is 32 pixels, and this is 32 pixels. And this mesh, these points and the lines that connect them, they will prevent anything else that has collision and comes in contact with this from moving through it. So back to our playable ball character, if this ball approaches this box and hits it on the edge, the ball has a spherical collision, so all of its perimeter doesn't allow anything through it. Same thing for this cube, all of its area doesn't allow anything with collision through it, so our character, if it's trying to move through the cube, will get stuck. And since we set our collision to cube, this toilet, this tile of the toilet, shouldn't allow any characters through it. Let's go up here to the view tab, the camera. Let's set it to a standard 45 degree view. Let's click on play and place our character right under the toilet. Now you can see the 3D perspective. I'm gonna try to move up towards the toilet. See that? I got stopped. I can't move through it. I'm not letting go of the top arrow key on my keyboard. I'm just not being allowed through the toilet. Let's go right next to the toilet, and now let's try to go through it from this side. Same thing, I'm getting blocked, and from the other side I'm getting blocked, and if I go behind the toilet and press down, I'm also getting blocked. So now that we understand what a cube is, a short is the same exact thing as a cube, but the height is cut in half. So instead of 32, this would be 16, and this would be a smaller cube collision. This applies for when the character can jump, for example. If the character can jump over 16 pixels, but can't jump over 32, that means the character can jump on this toilet seat and walk over it. But if the toilet seat was a cube collision, the character wouldn't be able to. Tallish is the same thing, except it's higher than what we had originally. So it's 48 pixels in height on the z-axis, and it would be something like this. So that's those three. Now this last one is double the height of the cube, and I guess you'd use it for a tree or something of that sort. You can customize your collisions however you want them. Small is the exact same thing as a cube, but exactly half the size, even for these values right here. So these would also be 16 and 16, which would make it a smaller cube. This last one, the flat collision, this is the exact same collision that our ground tiles have in this layer, and it will just be a collision that's just the bottom part of the cube without any height. So it wouldn't allow anything to go down, but you can walk over it. Clicking on custom over here, and then clicking on the edit button would open the collision editor, and if you use the mouse wheel to scroll in, you can kind of see that the view right now is set on 45 degrees and you see a square over here. If you click on top, right now we're looking on the toilet seat from the top, but we aren't seeing anything. Why is that? Well, the toilet seat will only be visible from the front. See, if I click on the front tab over here, this is the x-axis and this is the y-axis, and this is how the picture is drawn in the engine. We can see it in the 45-degree view, but if you click on the top, we can't see the toilet seat, but we can still see its collision. We remember that the collision is a cube of 32 by 32 by 32, and this is exactly what this is. If you look at the toilet seat from the top, its collision is this square. If you look at it from the side, well, I don't see a height here, so let's close out, set this back to a cube, and click on the edit button. Let's click on the side view again. Now we can see it does have a height of 32 pixels, and the Y coordinate is also 32 pixels. If you point anywhere at the top, it tells you which two axes you're looking at, and if you click on isometric, you can see that the toilet is only rendered on this bottom side, but its collision is still a cube. So what do we mean by rendered on this bottom side? Well, in the 3D tab, you can see that we have a box collision 32 by 32 by 32, but there's only one picture over here. How is that relevant? Well, if we close this, when we're playing a 2D game, like the demo we closed earlier, technically we'd only be looking at the front of everything. So playing a 2D game, this is the only view you'd get. So it doesn't matter that I can't see anything on the left and right side of the toilet. Now, we did open a 3D game, but if we go ahead and close it and create a new game where it's 3D adventure instead of 3D action RPG, let's name it Collision 3. And let's also import the 3 resources we exported a while back. Alright, looks like the engine crashed. I'm just gonna click on this Collisions 3 project we created. Alright, so let's go ahead and import those 3 resources. And let's create a new map. call it 1 again. Fill the black void with dirt, and let's place the toilet. Only one toilet. I'm gonna edit it real quick, make sure it's a cube collision. Alright, so let's click play anywhere here. Now, in this template, you can actually move your camera around with the mouse. So, if I look from the right side of the toilet, nothing is rendered. If I look from the back, there's also nothing rendered. I can still see its shadow, but I can't walk through it either. I'm trying, nothing's happening, but it's only rendered from this side. Now we can discuss that option we skipped over earlier. Two-sided. Render both the top and bottom of the tile. So if you have this selected and you try to look at the toilet from the back, you'll see that it is indeed rendered. Hopefully that makes sense so far and nothing's confusing. I've been trying to go really slow. In the environment set we imported, you can see that it's a tiny picture of a tree. But if you edit it, you can see that the size is 128 pixels by 256, even though it's fitting a small tile in our set over here. So whenever this set was made, a huge graphic was put into the small tile over here, and when you do that for the lower object layer, it actually keeps its size. So the scale at 100%, placing this tile on the map is going to actually give us this whole tree with these pixel numbers. So let's test it out and use the draw tool to place one of these trees on the map. You can see it placed the whole thing. Now, we talked about two-sided 3D, so if I go into the game now and test it, I won't be able to see the tree from behind unless I click on this. In the tile shape, you'll see an option that says Billboard 3D. Having that selected, let's go test the map. All that option means is that no matter where you move, the tree is gonna look at you. So the engine is gonna keep drawing the tree so that it's always facing the camera, wherever you look, even from the bottom or the top. The tree always stays the same direction. That's what a billboard is. I think games like Doom and other ones you might know about use this methodology. Let's see if we can have this toilet seat be a billboard, just to make sure we fully understand what a billboard is. You can still have it as a cube collision. Let's go ahead and test, and the toilet seat should always point at the camera. There you go. Kinda weird to have a rotating toilet seat, but that explains what billboard means. Let's see if there are any more options we can talk about that are quick and easy. smooth scaling of tiles, it tells you that it turns on anti-aliasing. All this does is make the tile look smoother when zoomed in on, rather than looking pixelated, and that's mostly useful for 3D games where you can actually get close to the graphic. Also, in the first two videos we've been using 128 pixels by 128 pixel graphics, and those are kind of an HD tileset that won't look bad when zoomed in on, compared to had we used tilesets that have less pixels in each tile. The color section in the variability, let's see if it works. You can choose two colors. And the engine should randomly change the color of the tile to somewhere between these two. Let's see if it does anything for this toilet. So now it's this color. Let's see what happens if we place another one. Now it's this color, this color, this color. It does look like it's a gradient, so I don't think it's swapping between two colors. I think it's actually picking a random point between those two colors. So that's what the color variability is. The offset allows you to place tiles randomly without them being on a grid. So, in our decoration tab, the resource that we imported called decoration, I'm just gonna Control Z on the keyboard and remove a lot of these. By the way, if you hold Control on the keyboard and then use your middle mouse button, you can change the camera view of the map. Let's put one of these flower pots. You can see it's stuck in this tile, right? That's the coordinates you're placing it on. It's in a grid. And when you're doing a lot of stuff for, let's say you're building a nature scene and you put a bunch of flowers in, the player can easily tell that every one of them are exactly the same distance apart from each other. So this option right here allows the stuff you're placing to be offset and actually go off the grid. So for the x-axis, let's say minus 16 pixels. I don't know if this is in pixels or... Let's try 0.5. It doesn't work. Alright, let's try minus 16 pixels. And so the maximum it can be offset by is 16 pixels to the left, and the maximum it can be offset by is 16 pixels to the right. So we gave it a 32 pixel wiggle room for this flower pot right here. Let's click on OK so it saves, and you can see that some of them are being put outside the grid. So when you go ahead and draw a bunch of these, a lot of them will be placed in a random manner, so it doesn't look as scripted or as organized as when that option isn't enabled, and it would look less scripted to the player. You can do the same thing with the y-axis, and if you do it like this, some of them will be floating in the air if you use the z-axis as well. If that has collision, it'll also stop the player, so be careful. And this looks much better with the spread once we had both x and y axes offsetting. Alright, So we talked about variability. Shadow distance, you can see that the engine has the option to draw shadows for anything you put in. So these toilet seats have kind of a shadow under them, these flower pots too. Let's try to change the shadow distance. I think this is in pixels. So if we do 64 pixels and look at the map, you can see that each one of these shadows is 64 pixels away from the spot over here. So that's that option. Scale, if we go back to the tree, remember that when we placed this tree down, it gave us the whole size. So let's try it again. Here's another one and another one. Alright, let's try this type of tree. You can see that this is the size it's supposed to be. If we go to the scale and put 50%, go back to the map, you can see how it's smaller now. And now every time we place one of those, it's going to be 50% of the size it is in the tile set. I think the altitude just changes the X position the Z position or Z position of the object you're trying to place in the map, and that can have an effect, especially if it's collision related. Let's see if one of these have. Okay, so we have this small sink and it consists of 2 tiles. When you place them on the map, let's go try to place them right now. Alright, this is a sink. In a 2D game, they would just see it like this. Now, if we go around, you can see that this top tile was automatically placed on top of this one without me having to click on this tile over here and then click on page up to go up in the Z-axis level and then place this thing. So why did that happen? Well, if you check this tile in the map, you can see it's already raised 32 pixels over here. So when you place it down, it'll automatically be placed 32 pixels above the tile you chose it on. If we set this back to 0 and try placing both tiles again, whoa, let me go back to, okay. This is what normally happens. The first tile gets placed on this tile and the one behind it gets placed over there. Now in a 45-degree angle game, which is what we're gonna be using and which is what we've used in the first 2 videos, it would just look like this and it would be perfectly fine. Let me change the view actually from the top. View, camera, standard 45 degrees, and it looks perfectly fine. But if we go back to the 3D perspective, you can see that each one of these tiles was placed on a separate coordinate in the map. So let's set this top tile back to how it was, raised up 32 pixels. Now it's back to where it's supposed to be. Now you can still place it where it's supposed to be without having that option. So if we set this to 0 and we want to do this effect right here, we choose the bottom part of the sink, we place it down, which is what we did here. We choose the top part of the sink, but instead of placing it on the tile above it, in the Y coordinates, we click on page up on the keyboard, and then we place it with this the blue line going down make sure that that line is touching the tile you placed the sink on. So we did the same thing as having this option set to 32 pixels, but we did it by clicking page up on our keyboard. Instead of clicking page up, you can also hold Control on your keyboard and then use the mouse scroll wheel, and that should raise your Z-axis position. I'm holding Control down on the keyboard and I'm scrolling up. You can see that the Z coordinate over here in the numbers is increasing. That's 4, 5, 6, 7, and we cannot go to 8 because when we created the map, we kept the depth at 8. So the maximum upwards we can go is 7. And if I hold Control again and start scrolling down on the mouse wheel, I'll start going down in the Z coordinates until I'm back to 0. Now I can't go below 0 unless I use submersion. Let's go back to the standard 45-degree view real quick. I'm just gonna erase everything over here. I don't know why. Oh, we have the wrong option selected. Okay. So you can see that when I erase everything with the filled rectangle and the eraser tool, this thing didn't disappear. That's because it was on another level. So if I click page up or hold Control on my keyboard and scroll up, I will go up on the Z-axis by 1, and now I can erase this thing. So let's go back down to our normal level. If we're making a normal 2D game, we can place a few trees and whatever else, and this is how it would look like. Forgot to put this back to 32. Bear with me here. Alright. So you would have a bunch of objects in front of you. And stuff can have shadows. If you go back to the Tileset Editor, you can see that there are options we didn't talk about over here. Flat below shadows is an option that lets shadows render on top of this object. So if there was a rug or something that's on the ground, you would have it flat below shadows, and then when something walks over it or is next to it, the shadows would be rendered on top of it. Flat above shadows would let the shadows render under the object. So a hole in the ground, something of the sort, you would choose this option for it. Against wall is just an option that this would be for stuff that would be placed against the wall, I guess, like it's saying, but also against anything like a cliff or whatever. I'm not sure about its collision. I guess it would be none for that case, but imagine a clock, for example. You'd choose against wall for it, and then you'd place it on a wall you already drew on the map. I think you can also choose against wall when you're putting a plate on a table, for example, or anything that you wouldn't mind having the player walk over or through. So if the player were to jump on the table, they wouldn't be stopped by what you have on the table that's set to against wall. Let's click on this help tab real quick and see the section we just talked about. There we go. So a tall thing would be a tree with collision. Below shadows would be a big blue rug. A woodcutter would be rendered above shadows. I guess the shadow would be passing under the counter. Against wall would be a small picture. Like I mentioned earlier, a clock would be that thing. The bent option, which we still haven't talked about, that's only noticeable with lighting and 3D perspective, and it has the bottom half of whatever you're placing as tall, and the top half would be flat, which would be something that's the same of these top two. So the bottom part would have a collision, let's say a cube, and then there would be a collision here that's flat instead of another whole cube behind it. Now, effectively, upper objects is the same exact thing. So this is where you'd put that clock or the painting, and I guess in lower objects against wall, that would be where there's already a wall behind what you're placing. So let's say there's a stove and you're placing it right exactly next to a wall. The top portion of the stove would be set against the wall over here. Finally, let's talk about the last layer, walls. Let's see the walls that come with with this template. Yeah. So when you're creating a 2D game, if you create a wall, this would happen. And you can, of course, use the tools to draw it. So you can use a box. But one thing I'd like you to note is if we go into the Play tab and we look around the wall, you can see that it's rendered on all four sides. So when you draw walls in the map, they're going to be rendered on all four sides, including the top. And you can see that the walls over here do have a terraformation. I think the terraformation for walls is easier than for the tiles. You can see that it's literally just a square within a square. And same thing for the convex section. It's this outer part square color in the middle, surrounded by this color right here. So this is how it would look like, but this doesn't apply because when you actually draw it in the map, it just renders it on all four sides. And when you choose a roof for it, the roof is usually just a ground tile. So you click on this roof button and you go to your ground tiles, and then you choose one of them, and that would be the roof used in the engine. Did we not save that? Oh, we have the wrong one. There we go. So this is the wall, and that was the roof tile we chose. And since the roof tile we chose had a terraformation, you can see it's terraforming on top of the wall. So over here, when we chose this floor tile in the ground set, it did have a terraformation, and that's why it was terraforming on top of the wall. So that's all I wanted to talk about for this video. You can remember all these options and what they mean, but the main thing to keep in mind is that even though we're going to be making a 2D game, let's name this Collisions 4, and I'm just going to use the Action RPG template. Even though we're going to be building games in a 2D space where the maps look like this, it is still a 3D space. So we draw in 2D, we place 2D objects, the player's sprites are just 2D pictures, but the space we're in, the void that we filled, is still a 3D space. So how the game is normally meant to go would be like this. And this is a 2D space, 2D game, everything is normal. You can see I can walk around, jump. This sign is preventing me from walking through it. This is how it looks like when I stand behind it. I can jump on top of the shrub because its collisions prevent me from walking through it, but it's not tall enough to stop me from jumping on top of it. If I jump on top of this thing, I can jump on top of this wall. But if I try to jump on top of the wall without jumping on the shrub first, I can't reach it. That's the jump height I have. So this shrub elevated me. So in a platformer game, for example, you would use a wall tile maybe. And that's how you'd make your platforming platforms, I guess. Now, even though this is a 2D space, it's actually a 3D space. So if we go to the View tab and change this to 3D isometric, this is how it actually looks like. The walls are 3D, yes, but everything else is a 2D image placed in a 3D setting. That's why these chairs look bent over here. That's why there's no need to render anything behind this table, because the player wouldn't see it from the front. You can set the camera to a front perspective, and this is what it would look like. Let's try to play it like this. There we go, that's a front perspective. You can see how if you consider the engine in a 3D space, it opens up a lot of creativity space, and you can imagine how much you can work with this. We needed to understand the collision and the other options we didn't talk about, mainly because in the next video, which is going to be an actual tutorial where we change our resource, we're going to be adding cliffs and ramps. Ramps are going to be a collision that we actually draw out, so it raises the player up when they walk on it. So it would be literally a collision that has a bunch of points, and when the player tries to walk on top of them, they would raise the player up a whole level. And this collision would just have a 2D picture in front of it, and we need to make sure this picture is set in the back so that the player isn't walking through it when we play the game as the player. Alright, that's it for this video. Thank you for watching. Let me know if there's anything I said that was wrong, or if there's any feedback on what I could change. Music's too loud, my voice is too low, whatever. Alright, thanks for watching.